A two-person show this morning in the Locked On Sports Minnesota Roundtable. I'm Sam Ekstrom. That's Julia Daniels of Care 11. I'm filling in for Ron Johnson today, who is in the Ozarks at a softball tournament. He tried, folks. He tried very hard to make this happen. Signal not cooperating. We're going to improvise this morning. Welcome in. We're glad you're with us here on Locked On Sports Minnesota, whether it's live or on demand or listening to the podcast version on the Locked On Sports Minnesota podcast feed. Again, you can find me at Sam Ekstrom on X. You can find Julia Daniels. Is it at Julia Daniels?
At Julia D. Daniels. There's two D's.
Julia D. Daniels, and you can find her on Care 11 Sports. Plenty to get into, Julia. We got Vikings training camp around the corner. Report date is coming up. We'll have introductory press conferences on Monday with KOC and Kwesi. Twins starting their second half of the season against the Brewers. What can we expect from them? Olympics around the corner. What are we most looking forward to? This show is presented by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code Locked On for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. We got to talk football. We got to talk Vikings, Julia. That's the big story in town as training camp is around the corner. Always the most optimism, always the most buzz. Unfortunately, in this interim period leading up to camp has not been a lot of optimism or buzz. It's been the wrong type of publicity for the Vikings. Obviously, the Jordan Addison suspected DUI last week. And then the prior weekend, even more tragic, the death of Kyrie Jackson. And yet they'll take the field, this coming week. We'll hear from all the players reporting, and we'll get into real training camp mode. So as we look ahead to training camp for the Minnesota Vikings, Julia, let's talk some bold predictions. What do you think is going to happen over the next month in Eagan at TCO?
Okay, so we're going bold here.
Yeah, let's go bold.
Let's go bold. Okay. I don't know if this is necessarily bold, but I would say training camp, maybe not early on, but little bit in the middle there. Well, I would hope that we would see JJ McCarthy get some reps with the ones. Not necessarily saying that he's, getting that starting spot, because I don't think that he is getting the starting spot. Sam Darnold's going to be QB1 headed into training camp. I have a feeling he's going to stay there through week one at least, if not, longer than that. If not through the season, should he stay healthy. But I think I just get the feeling that there's going to be some Saturday where all the fans are out there and they're going to put JJ McCarthy out there. And hopefully he shines if they put him in a position like that. But I think that we'll see him get some reps with the ones at some point. Right now, I know he's battling for backup with Nick Mullins, or at least heading into training camp, he'll be battling Nick Mullins for that backup spot. But I would hope somewhere along the line, or maybe on their night practice that they have at TCO Stadium, maybe they'll give him a shot to get in there and throw some things to Jets and some of those guys, Jordan Addison, and we'll see how he fares with that. But I think it's going to be some big, like, oh, look, JJ McCarthy. We'll see a lot of tweets about it when we're out there someday and get to see, maybe what he's all about in that instance. And I think that a lot of people don't expect to see something like that, but I also wouldn't be surprised if they kind of like threw us a little bone like that.
Yeah, I think that's relatively bold because the Vikings, everything they've said publicly would indicate they are not expecting JJ McCarthy to win this job. They're not going to rush him in any way. And the funny thing is, nobody believes them. Like,
right.
If you look at the sports books, if you look at the fantasy football prognosticators, if you talk to any fan, they all expect to see JJ McCarthy at some point early in the season. Everybody's kind of anticipating the other shoe to drop with Sam Darnold.
Yeah.
1-4 start seems to be the trendy prediction that at the bye, the Vikings will make that move. JJ McCarthy will be their starter. Tough early schedule. And could it be earlier than that? Could it be expedited? Could it be week one? I don't think anybody expects that to happen. My complaint last year with Jaron Hall, and again, this was a 5th-round pick, was that they didn't really even open the door for him to do anything or make any noise. He was with the 3s consistently. I think he was with the 4s for a minute in the summer. They didn't really let that play out whatsoever to even be the backup. I hope with JJ McCarthy, who is a 1st-round pick, who is your future, even if he's not ready, I hope they allow him to sort of play out of his league a little bit and play with the ones. Like, I hope that they give him that opportunity, because what is training camp for? I mean, this has to be a place where you can take the field and learn how to fail. Like, it might not always be pretty, but you got to play against the best competition. So if he was just going through the motions with the threes, not getting a lot of reps in team drills, because you've seen, Julia, the threes don't get a lot of work. It's
Right.
mostly the ones and twos. I would be disappointed if they kind of have their hierarchy, Darnold, Mullins, and then McCarthy as an afterthought. That would disappoint me, because if you want him to be ready at a moment's notice, if an injury occurs, to be the
Right.
backup, you got to let him play with the ones and twos. So I really hope you're right about that, and that occurs for the Vikings. So here's my bold thought. I feel like there's a trade in the works. I feel like the Vikings have enough cap space and maybe enough incentive to think that they could be competitive, that they could swing something. We've seen Marshawn Lattimore's name tossed out there. Again, he comes at a big salary number, but the Vikings can't afford it. They've got the salary cap space. Brandon Ayuk available in a contract year, from the 49ers. Could that be swung? Could they load up and give Sam Darnold and J.J. McCarthy everything their heart desires at the receiver position? Because again, Julia, they don't really have a wide receiver 3. So let's just bring in Ayuk, knock Addison down to wide receiver 3, and suddenly you've got like the coolest wide receiver room in the NFL. Again, these are bold predictions. But would you give up a first-round pick next year for Brandon Ayuk? Nah, I don't know. Maybe that'd be cool. And think about what J.J. McCarthy could have surrounding him as a rookie. I mean, I just think that would be super cool. Will it happen? Probably not. But Julia, we're thinking bold predictions. Like, would you mind bringing in a star via trade during this camp?
If you had asked me before the DUI stuff, I would probably say, no, that's insane. But now that this has happened, I could be a solid move that they make there.
And right, it could be 3 games. Like, it could be 3 games for Addison. We don't know when that's going to happen, because it probably comes from the league whenever the legal stuff gets resolved. What if it happens during the Hawkinson injury period, where they don't have Hawkinson, they don't have Addison, they don't really have a clear-cut wide receiver 3? It could be very slim at the pass catcher position if you don't have somebody else. So maybe it's not Ayuk, but maybe it's somebody else that does get brought in to solidify that room. I think that could be very, very interesting, and it's doable because, again, the Vikings have some cap space, which we don't often say this time of year. Rick Spielman always brought it all the way up to the cap. Kwesi the first couple of years brought it all the way up to the line. This year they've got money to play with, so that could be awfully interesting. Let's just continue in the vein of predictions here just for a moment, Julia. Any battles that you'd like to predict right now? Camp battles, position battles, any standouts that you're expecting, anything along those lines?
I mean, I think we talked about this a few weeks ago, Dalton Reisner and Blake Randall, when it comes to guard. I think that's one of the main ones. And then obviously, like you said, wide receiver 3, we'll see what happens with the tight end position and how they utilize that. I think that right now it's the Dalton Reisner, Blake Randall show when it comes to competition at any kind of spot. The quarterback room looks a little different this year too. We'll see how that plays out in terms of having a little more veteran presence. But I think right now the main one that we'll probably go into day 1 of training camp next week and look for is, what Blake Randall and Dalton Reisner are doing, because 2 different kind of guys. I think Dalton Reisner, obviously talented. He's a locker room favorite, I think. And so there's a balance there too in terms of, obviously, I mean, he's got skills, but at the same time, I think a huge part of what draws the Vikings to him is what he brings to the team mentally, not obviously physically as well. He's a huge guy, but when it comes to how he brings the team together too. But it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. Kevin O'Connell has talked about that too. But yeah, I think that's the main competition. If you look at the depth chart right now, that's the one that kind of sticks out. And then, we'll see what happens with the tight ends. Obviously, you still got Josh Oliver, who will be that number 1 spot for tight end. But we'll also see how they utilize him whenever they tell us to put our cameras away and they start actually running some plays and things like that, especially with TJ Hawkinson out. Yeah, I think that those are kind of where we'll probably get the most draw and see who's getting those reps.
No doubt. There's always the battles that you expect, which I think the guard position is the biggest one we're expecting. And then sometimes there are the battles you don't expect. Like last year, we did not expect Ivan Pace to be competing with Brian Asamoah for the starting linebacker job. That was set in stone in our mind. We thought that Brian was sort of the top dog on the ladder going into camp, and suddenly he was fighting for his position and lost it to Ivan Pace. We did not expect that battle. So will there be something like, and this is a little less out of left field, but could Dallas Turner upend Andrew Van Ginkel and kind of be that number 2 pass rusher with Jonathan Grenard, and Van Ginkel could be the third? I think that could be up in the air. Could there be someone at defensive tackle that emerges as a starter, like the 7th rounder Levi Drake Rodriguez, who people are kind of excited about, who's kind of a little off the radar from a small school? Like, could he step up and suddenly be that surprise starter at a pretty thin interior? Maybe. Like, those are the battles that I want to see emerge, the ones we don't expect right now. That's what I'm kind of excited for. That's kind of the fun of camp, when you see some of these depth chart decisions the coaches have made based on what they saw during the spring practices, because I'm sure a lot of that will influence how the depth chart plays out here in training camp. More to get to, including Jordan Addison's situation will take center stage once the team reports. How do we expect that to be handled by the Vikings? That's coming up next on the Locked On Sports Minnesota Roundtable. Today's show brought to you by Game Time. It's an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball. That makes getting tickets faster and easier when the prices go down the closer you get to first pitch. Yes, save up to 60% with last-minute deals, not just for sports, but concerts, comedy, theater, etc. Views from your seat, all-in prices, no hidden fees, the lowest price guarantee. Game Time is simply fantastic to use. Couple clicks and you've got tickets. Let's open it up right now. The Twins play the Brewers on Saturday. They're back at home after a long layoff. It's a border battle. You can get tickets for $66 on the Game Time app. And again, that's probably going down the closer you get to first pitch. Your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. Take the guesswork out of buying those tickets. Download the Game Time app. Create an account. Use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code Locked On for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, welcome back. I'm Sam Ekstrom. Again, that's Julia Daniels of KARE 11. Continuing on with the Vikings talk as training camp is around the corner in Eagan. So this one, on a little more sobering note, the Jordan Addison situation. We haven't gotten too many more details from this, but again, just to reset what we know, Jordan Addison suspected DUI last weekend in LA. Again, another driving infraction. He drove 140 last year in the Twin Cities. He got more or less a slap on the wrist from the team for that. He, pleaded down to a misdemeanor driving offense. This one, even greater severity, suspected DUI, fell asleep at the wheel in a Rolls Royce. So there's going to be a lot of eyeballs on this. I think probably the first question that comes out of a reporter's mouth to KOC and Kwesi is going to be about Jordan Addison. Jordan Addison's going to have to stand in front of the camera and answer questions about this. Some hard questions, probably. So, Julia, what do you expect to see from that situation? And I guess, what do you want to hear from the Vikings as they address it?
Well, I think it's just jumping back to the Brandon Ayuk trade. There are people that think maybe you just send Jordan Addison and 2026 first round pick for Brandon Ayuk, which could very well be the case. I don't know if you saw that he deleted all of his Vikings stuff off of his social media, which I
did see that.
Interesting, especially after he just recreated the KG Randy Moss iconic picture all on his own, and then started putting out stuff about being wide receiver 1, and it's been very confusing to me, because especially when you're on a team with Justin Jefferson, right? You're putting out that you're, wide receiver one, this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
It's sad to me to see that, especially it was like days before that, he's got this confidence boost. I felt like he's been more confident this offseason. Obviously, last year he's a rookie. There's a lot of expectation for him. He's kind of an unexpected pick. You get nervous in those situations with media. He's seemed more confident and obviously posted on social media and put out a more confident vibe about his role with the Vikings and the potential that he thinks that he has. And then for this to happen, and then he just kind of deletes all of that off social media, I think it's a little sad. To me, we'll hear from Kwesi and KOC on Monday. It'll be interesting to see the action that they take. And I also think that there's been a little bit of a gray area because it's been suspicion of a DUI. I haven't, correct me if I'm wrong, haven't seen that he actually got a DUI. He was, I know, asleep at the wheel at LAX around 11 o'clock at night. Don't really know a whole lot more detail about that. I would assume that the team has a little bit more detail about that. But at the same time, the sheriff's office or whoever releases the information or is supposed to put the information online, that's all public record. And for some reason, we haven't gotten a lot more detail about that either, which I think is interesting. I think 3-game suspension is what everyone is expecting for him. So that blows for the Vikings. It comes to the start of the season, especially with Hawk not in play for the beginning of the season. I think Kevin O'Connell has talked a little bit about the expectation that there is for this team. He talks a lot about culture, which I know everyone thinks is just such a buzzword nowadays. But I think that he really does stand by the culture that he's trying to cultivate with this team. Now headed into year 3, but we'll see what Kwesi and KO say, because I think this is a first for Kevin O'Connell to deal with, and Kwesi. In their positions of power that they are in. So I do also think if I'm in their position, you have to set a precedent for the rest of the rookies that you bring in. The Vikings have a history of shenanigans just in franchise history. Now you've kind of got to figure out the precedent that you want to set because you are in charge. And so 3-game suspension is what I would expect from them. We'll see what they say on Monday too when they finally talk publicly, and obviously people will be asking questions about that on Monday for their pressers. But my expectation is the suspension. But also I would assume maybe we're going to get some more details about what actually happened there. But only time will tell with that one.
There's always the anticlimactic. We can't comment on this because it's like a legal issue. It's ongoing. Right. That could very well be what Jordan takes as a stance. And I don't know how much they'll be willing to address regarding the details of the incident, because it sounds like an unresolved issue. It hasn't even been confirmed whether the substance was alcohol. I think we assume that, but that hasn't even been said outright. We didn't get a BAC. So there is a lot we don't know about this issue. But I thought that last year, after the driving incident, while the team didn't punish him, I did think that KOC was very firm in his rebuke of what happened. And I thought he laid down the line pretty clearly in that first press conference and said how unacceptable that was. And I would hope that we hear the same thing from him again this year. And I think the question I'm sure they'll get is, will there be a team-sanctioned punishment for Jordan Addison, some kind of suspension on that front?
Right.
And I guess I would just prepare people to, if you're hoping for that, if you're expecting that, you'll probably be disappointed. I just don't think that that's necessarily what's going to happen. I think that teams, more often than not, they're going to let the league handle it. It's not to the team's benefit to suspend him and take him off the field during this camp time. I don't believe the team can really take money out of his pocket. I think that's more of a league thing as well. So I think he's going to be on the field. If this is going to be appealed, if it's going to be ongoing, we may not see the repercussions of it for a little while. We don't know how cut and dried this is. It could be an anticlimactic answer that we get. I hope there's more said. I hope that we get more detail. I hope the Vikings have a very, very strong message. And, that Julia, I don't know how much you were here for the Mike Zimmer era? Maybe none. Did you ever overlap with Mike?
Nope.
Okay, so
right when KO started.
all right. I wouldn't mind a little Mike Zimmer old school rhetoric from this one.
Yeah.
Mike Zimmer was refreshingly honest at times. He would let you know if he was mad at a player. Now, did the players appreciate that tact? Probably not. It's probably why they had issues with him. But if this happened under Mike Zimmer's watch, you know, Jordan Addison might be doing push-ups. He might be running laps after practice. There would be some things said that would put him on blast. And I guess I wouldn't mind just a little bit of that old school mentality from KOC in this case. That, you know, Jordan should be the first one to practice, last one to leave. I do think that he needs to draw a pretty firm line on this one. We can't have any touchy-feely stuff regarding something this serious. So that's my stance on that. We'll hear, I think Monday is the first time that KOC and Kwesi talk about Jordan Addison. And maybe we'll get more details over the weekend on that case as he's reporting to Egan. But we got to pivot to baseball, Julia. The Twins start their second half of the season against the Milwaukee Brewers. They are 54-42 with 66 games left. We talk Twins after a very brief pause here on the Roundtable. Okay, back at it. Twins, Brewers this weekend. Twins 12 games over 500. Julia, I've crunched the numbers. Twins are on a 91-win pace at the All-Star break. Mm-hmm. So to reach that, they would have to go 37-29 the rest of the way. Seems doable.
Yeah.
You think they meet that? You think they exceed that? Or do you think they come up short of that?
I would say they meet that. I think they went into the break hitting better than any team in the league, I believe. Mm-hmm. I think their confidence was shot so early on, and they've built it up. They've done a good job of that, but it's baseball, and it's the Twins. So it's ebbs and flows. I think they'll go through maybe a little drought in there where they'll have I don't think they're going to go through a 12-game winning streak like they did before the break and then go through a 7-game lose streak. I don't think it'll be that. I think there will be some frustrating times where they're going to strand runners like they tend to do every now and again. But I could see them getting 37 wins. That's what you said, right? 37?
37-29 would be the mark.
I could definitely see that. I could see them, if they keep playing the way that they have, and Royce comes back. Royce is supposed to come back. I could see them putting up more than 37 wins, potentially. But this is all, it's the Twins. They are one of the hardest teams to just predict what's going to happen with them. But I definitely think, yes, they should at least meet that, knock on wood. If not exceed it, should they keep hitting the way that they have been, because that's been obviously their strong suit. And yeah, we'll see how that goes. I do think there's going to be some frustrating times ahead where it's just they get so low, but then they get so high, and it really balances out for this team. They're one of the only Major League Baseball teams where they can just really go so far down in the gutter, and then somehow they're the best in the league when it comes to the offense. It's so bizarre. You really don't see it anywhere else, and that's what it makes for great stories and things like that. But you start out one of your worst seasons ever. You start out, and then you're hitting better than anyone else in the league since April. It's bizarre.
Yeah, this roller coaster of a season, the ebbs have been very ebby, and the flows have been very, very flowy. The line graph is it's think about the extremes of the season, the 7-13 start, the worst 20-game start in team history hitting wise, the cold streaks of Correa, Kepler, and Buxton at times, and then for them to do some of the things they've done, Royce going on that tear where he's doing things that have never been done in the league. The streak by Miranda was very extreme
and random.
Very random, very out of nowhere. And they did this all with very poor health from Lewis, They had, injuries kind of littered across the roster. Pablo Lopez was nowhere near what they wanted, and Juwan Duran, their best reliever, was nowhere near what they expected. Now, I think if those three things balance out to normalcy in the second half of the season, if they get ace stuff from Pablo, if Duran finds his velocity again, which in that last appearance against San Francisco, he had his best velocity performance of the season, he might have figured it out. And if Lewis can stay healthy, which is by far the biggest knock on wood,
Yeah.
and because again, he's coming into the second half already with probably a suspect hamstring or what was it, a hammy this time?
It was his hip.
His hip. Okay.
No. Am I getting those flip-flopped?
Well, he's had a lot. He's had a lot of lower body
He's
injuries,
a
Julia, so it's hard to
rotator
keep track
things.
what's what.
Yes.
But again, if he can play consistently for a couple months in a row, I do think that you could exceed the 37 win pace that you're on. Like, again, 37-29, that's the pace they've been playing at. But if you look at the last 70 or so games, it's actually a better pace than that because that includes their terrible start. So they could, if they could play at a 40+ win pace the rest of the way, they could win 94 games, 95 games, and that probably puts them pretty close to Cleveland. I mean, Cleveland has been coming back to the pack slowly. The baseball experts that I see tweet keep indicating that Cleveland is going to kind of regress back to the mean in some areas. So that could be a battle come September for the AL Central title. You want to have home field in the postseason, obviously, get that crowded Target Field back behind you like they were last season. So I'm actually kind of optimistic about the Twins in the second half. Would love to see more of the games. That'd be great. The TV situation sucks for the fans, but I think that I'm going to go 94. I think that they play 40-win baseball the rest of the way, go 40-26, have a really good second half, and we'll see what happens. It is like they could do that, Julia, or they could fall out of the race entirely. It's a pretty competitive AL wildcard position right now with Boston playing great, KC hanging around. So it's not like they're guaranteed a spot. They do have to keep playing at a pretty high level.
Yeah. Oh, man. I grew up with the Arkansas football and the Cowboys. And the Cowboys, I was born in 97. So I have not seen good from the Cowboys. And Arkansas football. Went to Alabama for school. So I've seen like the worst where it's just consistently bad my entire life, Arkansas and the Cowboys. And then I go to Alabama and it's just amazing, right? And you drink the Kool-Aid and it's awesome. So coming up here and it's just so up and down, it's a little jarring for me.
We're not stable.
Yeah.
In the least.
There's no like expectation here.
Yeah, we're pretty volatile here in this market. In closing, 30 seconds, Julia. Olympics are 1 week away on your network, KARE 11. What event are you most looking forward to?
I'm going to be honest. Obviously, everyone loves gymnastics, right? Can't wait to see Suni, Simone, Jordan Childs. We did all the trials here. So, excited for gymnastics. It's so fun to watch. I love swimming so much. I love swimming. Nothing makes me feel more like an American than watching United States just whoop up on Australia, especially because Australia loves to talk. But I love swimming. Swimming and gymnastics are at the very beginning of the Olympics, so they're done sooner than anything else. But swimming, I will stay up at any time of night to watch Reagan Smith and Katie Ledecky and Lily King do their thing.
Yeah, Caleb Dressel. I mean, we are lockstep on that. Swimming, by far my favorite. Dan Hicks and Rowdy Gaines are some of the best announcers, I think, to bring that extra flavor to it. And maybe it's because the team is just so darn good, so darn competitive. Every single event, it feels like the USA has a gold medal contender. But just the memories over the years, every Olympics delivers these new heroes, whether it's the relays or, the comebacks down the stretch and the world records. Our swim team is
stars too.
Awesome. Yes. So two of the biggest sports the U.S. has a large presence in this year. So can't wait for that. Again, you can watch all that on KARE 11 and then check out Julia and Reggie Wilson after on the local news. That is our show today. It's the Locked On Sports Minnesota Roundtable. Check out all of our programming: Minnesota Basketball Party, Minnesota Football Party, the Ron Johnson Show. all of that here at Locked On Sports Minnesota. Please subscribe. For Julia, I'm Sam. Thanks a lot for watching. We'll be back with you next Friday on The Roundtable.